Hey, welcome back to Barley and Hops. Today we're going to do another video. And this one's going to be on operating the Turbo 500. Now I know we've done one of these before, but the difference with this one is we're going to use a little bit of different equipment and we're going to kind of show you what we've got here. So I'm not going to spend as much time on the actual distillation process with the Turbo 500 as I am with some of the accessories. Now, we've talked before about the fast ferment, and I've got my George Washington rye whiskey in here. Well, that's my mash, and that's been sitting in here now for, my goodness, at least a month. And just remember that a mash doesn't really go bad. So you can let it sit there for a month or two. Sometimes it'll take me 2 months before I get to it. If you got a really high alcohol content, my goodness, it makes it a natural preservative, so it doesn't really go bad. Just be careful if you're using fruits, because some fruits, once fermented, you let them sit for a long time, especially if oxygen's introduced, they'll turn bad, they'll sour, spoil, or turn to vinegar. But in this case, we don't have that to worry about. Now, I've already removed the airlock. Remember, I always talk about that. Remove the airlock, because when things come out the bottom, it's going to suck air in the top. So we're going to fill up our Turbo 500 boiler here in just a second. And if you recall, that's what it looks like. That's the Turbo 500, and it comes with the stack on the top. This is the column. We're going to run that here in just a little bit. But additionally, what I'm going to add to it is the water flow regulator. Now, if you had any experience with the Turbo 500, you know that that small little needle valve to control the temperature is really, really fine and minute. And, you're in the middle of a run and you've got your temperature set just perfect. Well, the dishwasher comes on, or the wash machine comes on, or there's a spike or a dip or somewhere in your water system where the pressure changes. Well, that pressure changes also through you, so you're back at trying to adjust that needle valve. This is supposed to eliminate that altogether, so we're going to give it a test and find out just exactly how good it works. So, without any further ado, I'm going to turn off the valve off of my fast ferment, which really secures the ball from the rest of the fermenter. I'm going to remove this, and as always, I put a little bucket on the bottom just to collect anything that drops, and usually 1 or 2 drops. I'm going to drop that in. This is one of the attachments that come with the fast ferment. It's a filling hose, bottling hose. I always put a bottling cane on the end so I can fill wine bottles or beer bottles or whatever I'm filling. I took it off this time. I'm going to screw that on here. And here in just a little bit, stick it inside my my Turbo 500. I'll open up the valve. There she goes. Look, it's going to take a couple of minutes. We're going to fill this up. You can hear it running, and I'll be back with you shortly. It's not going to take too long. We'll get this thing fired up, and you'll see how everything works. Well, hang in there. Let's get down to business. I've moved around a little bit. I've got the still sitting right here, my Turbo 500 pot. If you listen, you can probably hear it. It's starting to heat up. I've got that thing running. But what I want to talk about briefly first is something that I haven't seen anywhere else yet, and that is, well, how do we get this thing so clean? Because the first time you run it, it really runs well. And then after that, you start having a little bit of taste, flavor issues with it. Well, it's cleanliness. I've got my column right here, and I can't show you inside here, although I do have a small flashlight. I'll turn this on, and you can look down inside, and you'll see a rolled coil. That's called a torpedo. And the torpedoes, and that's what gives it such a reflux action, is a torpedo. So we got to clean that, because that'll start to tarnish. I'll give you another example. You know that inside, depending on which one you get or where you get it from, you're going to have these rashing rings or saddles. They look like this. Now these are already clean because I soaked these in some citric acid. I put a little bit of citric acid, vinegar, and water. You can skip the citric acid. Just vinegar and water, let them soak overnight, and then clean them up and dry them. But here's the challenge. These are the copper saddles. Well, the copper saddles come out looking like this because they start to tarnish. And also some of those fusel oils start to get attached to that. Really, what you want them to look like this. These are copper. All right. Well, the same thing happens inside. If you can look down, I might be able to get you to see that. If you can look down inside there we go. You can see that coil in there, and that coil is made of copper also. So we got to get that clean. Well, let me tell you the easiest way to clean that. Tarnex. You can get this at Walmart. I open up a little bottle of Tarnex. It's probably $4 or $5 a bottle, and you pour this in and you let it soak for a few minutes. But of course, now I poured about a half a bottle in there, and I'm gonna let that soak around. There's no need to scrub this, not when you get inside here. You don't want to scrub that because you don't want to destroy or hurt or ruin anything. But once you do that for a while, and I'm going to shorten this one just for the video. I'd let that sit in there for 10, 15 minutes. But once you finish with that, pour that into another container. You don't want to waste it. You don't want it to go away. Pour that into another container. You know those copper saddles that you had? Those old copper saddles? Drop those into that container. And you let that do the same thing to your copper saddles as it does to your inside of your column. And if you'll notice that now, you'll see that it's starting to bubble a little bit, and it's going to clean those copper saddles for you. The goal is to get them to be about like this. Nice copper color and clean. They may not be perfect, but at least they'll be clean. Remember, the cleaner in the still equals the cleaner out the still. So the cleaner the still with clean medium inside the still, your wash, is going to equal a very unique, exquisite spirit. That's all I've got for you right now. We'll be back in a few minutes when this thing gets ready, gets heated up, and we'll get it all put together. So hang in there and I'll see you shortly. Well, it's been about 4 or 5 minutes or so, and I just want to make sure I got a chance to show you one of these. That's one of the, right there it is. That's the copper saddle that we cleaned out with that Tarnex. But then of course, you're going to rinse those off. And you know me well enough by now, I go nowhere without my bottle of Star Sand. I cleaned out the inside of this as well, and then guess what? Yep, I sprayed it with Star Sand, then rinsed that out too, so this thing comes out nice and clean. Well, we're going to get back to our business at hand, because our business at hand is actually using some of the equipment that or accessories that are available with your Turbo 500. Not necessarily how the Turbo 500 works, but you're going to get to see that anyway, which is great. Now, we've got this water flow regulator. The water flow regulator is really, really unique. It's a regulator. There's a small pump in here, and then there's a float valve. There's the electrical connector, and then there's water in, and then there's the water out. And of course, here's your needle valve up at the top. But what's really neat about this is that you've got a hose that goes from the water out to your still, to the column, just like you normally would, but you skip the needle valve that's on the sink. I don't know if you had this challenge in the past. I've had this challenge. It's just trying to adjust that needle valve, and by golly, somebody flushes a toilet, something happens, and all of a sudden your water pressure changes. So we've come up with this, and these are really, really nice. Well, I'll tell you what comes included. There's probably no sink in the world it won't fit. My goodness, they send you, this is a dual connector that either goes on one way or the other depending on what type of faucet you have. And then of course this is the barb that fits this side, or this goes in here and you put this on the sink and the barb fits on this part. So it's sort of like, it's intuitive. There's really nothing else you need except for just a little bit of electricity and a running still. Voila. Now we're going to show you, this is marked positive and negative, so you'll know which direction to increase or decrease flow. And of course we do that flow based on the temperature. And here in about, oh my goodness, I don't know, it's been going on now for about 30 minutes. So I'm getting ready to cover this up. I usually leave it open for the first couple minutes just for the smell. I get the aroma and get to see what's going on. So this thing is heating up. We will be back with you just as soon as we possibly can. I'll have this all hooked up and running, and we'll see what happens.
Now we're back.
And I've got this whole thing set up. Let me move my Star Sand out of the way. I've got this whole thing set up, and I'm really, really impressed with it now. I've got my temperature marked right here. You'll see that. That's running. The still is just about up to temperature, and I've got a bucket to collect the hot water. The pump itself, actually it's like a volume control module. Very, very quiet. I've got water in, it's got the valve inside that shuts it off, and I can adjust it here very, very easy. What I had to do though, well not had to do, but one of the benefits, the valve that comes with the Turbo 500 that goes on your sink, I just removed that and put this I just put this aside. I mean, my goodness, it really is working well. I'm very impressed with it. So I think it's really, really well worth the money. They run about 80 bucks, but by golly, I'm happy with it. Now, here's a couple of other points for you before we come back and show you a little bit of the stuff that's happening here. One day I lost this. I lost my my thermometer probe, and I hope you can see this up here. That's the one that attaches to the column. It's got the small probe that goes in here. What I found was my old oven probe that my wife uses in the oven. Believe it or not, it'll work. Just all you gotta do is stick this in there and let it sit there because this is open. It's not sealed. If water comes out of here, that means your water flow is really, really too fast. So it normally will. As soon as you turn it on, you get it going, you get a little water spurt out of there, but it flows naturally. And this is a temperature probe that sticks in there. So hey, look, if this ever goes belly up on you, don't worry about it. Just grab one of these things right here. And these are really indispensable, $5-6. It all depends on where you get them. But anything with a temperature probe, and some of them even have alarms on them that'll go off and tell you what when it hits your temperature. Now, last but not least, before we move on, is this has been used. I've used this probably 6 or 7 different times. And you'll notice, just like in a coffee pot, you'll start getting some scorching in the bottom. There's no way to avoid it. It's going to happen at some point in time. Please don't use anything abrasive in there. All you're going to do is scar it up. Look, we use Tarnex to clean the column. We use Tarnex to clean the copper saddles. Believe me, if you open it up and you've got a little bit in the bottom there, especially around where the heat ring is, if you pour some Tarnex in there and let it sit for just a couple of minutes, probably a minute or two, and take a damp cloth or a paper towel, it'll wipe right out. So it'll clean it right off. And then of course, make sure you clean it after that. And as always, give it a shot of Star Sand. You can't go wrong. I use it on just about everything. Look, folks, I'll be back with you shortly, and we'll see how this starts to produce. Okay. Thanks. I've hit just about the end of this. I'm still running. I've been at this for about 30 or 40 minutes. I've probably got almost a quart. We're just going to let this thing continue to run, but that's all there is to it. I'll tell you, at the end of the day, this pump is really a good purchase. Now, it doesn't matter if someone flushes in the house or if the dishwasher comes on or the wash machine or someone wants to do something else. This thing really does exactly what they say it'll do. The adjustments are very, very fine, but they're very, very easy to control. And what more can I tell you? It works the same way it would without it, except this just makes life a little bit easier. Look, we'll see. If you need something, give us a call, 254-681-1760. Visit us on www.barleyandhopsbrewing.com. There's many, many ways. So we'll see you on the next video. Thank you.
When the feeling's high and I won't live long, of old corn liquor, I think about corn. I'm going back.